Welcome back. We are breaking down Week 2 fantasy football running back tier list. Today I'm going to go through my top 30 to 36 running backs. These were done from a half PPR to PPR frame of mind. As well, I'm going to go throughout this video my start of the week at the running back position, some deeper league plays, some injury updates, matchups. As we get going through this season, I'll break down some usage as well. We definitely have some nuggets to go through from Week 1 of fantasy football. And now we're going to get right into it. Let's start with the will they play tier. So at the beginning of this video every week, I'm going to break down all of the major injuries that are affecting my tier list rankings for the running back position that could shake up your start-sit decisions. And we have two major contributors right off the jump that are struggling to stay healthy right now. Austin Ekeler has not practiced all week at all with an ankle injury he suffered against the Dolphins. His agent also passed away, so obviously condolences to him. But it does look like he will be out this week, and I'll talk about where Josh Kelly fits in as a result of that. We had a report from Daniel Popper on Twitter saying that he is not going to travel to Tennessee with the team this week, which would obviously indicate he is probably not going to play. He's officially listed as doubtful, but I would assume pretty comfortably that he's going to be out. We also have reports from fantasy doctors thinking that it looks like it's going to be a high ankle sprain, if they had to guess, from the comments that we've heard from Ekeler himself and from the team, and the average could be, 2 to 3 week injury, 4-week injury. So keep that in mind. If you guys picked up Josh Kelly, he might not just be available for use this week. He might also be viable next week as well. Then we get into Aaron Jones, who's the other major running back injury this week. He had a hamstring injury against the Chicago Bears last week in the blowout game that they had. He said it was mild during the game. He said he could have came back and played, but I think a lot of people forget to realize that in the moment, these guys have so much adrenaline going that usually they can play through injuries, but once we get throughout the week, things swell up. It's harder to play through. And this guy's 29 years old, man, with a hamstring issue. I'm not really thinking they're going to want to test that. I think they're going to be a little bit more conservative. I expect them to just lean on A.J. Dillon this week for the most part. So I have ranked Josh Kelly and A.J. Dillon rather aggressively in anticipation that Austin Ekeler and Aaron Jones are going to be out. So if you guys have Austin Ekeler and Aaron Jones, I would suggest probably making other arrangements because I think both players will be out this week. So now let's get in to the actual running back tier list itself. Locked in running back starts. We have running backs 1 to 12. All of these guys are in your lineup. I'm just going to break down kind of who could overperform, who could underperform, who has a good matchup, who has a high-scoring game environment, who has a bad matchup, that kind of thing. So some of these elite running backs that you guys can see in good matchups, we have Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne, and Ramondre Stevenson. All of these guys are in pretty positive game environments, pretty decent run matchups in terms of the run defense that they're going after. And then also we have some guys notably in some really high-scoring potential games, both Kenneth Walker and Jahmyr Gibbs in that Seattle-Detroit game. That game was a big-time shootout last year, and I think David Montgomery also fits into this, but Jahmyr Gibbs and Kenneth Walker really high in my rankings as a result. Josh Jacobs also in a potentially high-scoring game against the Buffalo Bills. And then Ramondre Stevenson going up against the Miami Dolphins. That game has the fastest combined pace of any game on the slate right now. So that one could definitely be high scoring. And we know what the Dolphins can do on the other side of the ball on offense. And then we have some elite running backs here with some not so good matchups, right? Tony Pollard going up against the Jets. We know how good that Jets defense is. Joe Mixon going up against the Ravens. The Ravens have been a stout run defense, one of the best in the league ever since they traded for Roquan Smith last year. So those two guys probably in for a bit of a tougher matchup. Running back 11 in my rankings, I feel like I need to explain my take on Jahmyr Gibbs here because he only had 9 touches last week, so it's a rather aggressive of me to rank him this high. But with Jahmyr Gibbs, we got comments on multiple occasions right after the game as well as later in the week that he's probably going to see some more work this week. So I am ranking him kind of in anticipation of that. He forced 6 missed tackles on just 9 touches, looked absolutely outstanding on Thursday Night Football in the Week 1 opener. The Seahawks-Lions game, like I said, was a barn burner last year, and it currently has a 47.5 point over-under. So I'm ranking Jahmyr Gibbs a little aggressively as a result. So now let's get into the guys that you probably actually have start-sit questions about, and the high-end RB2s tier is the first group that we're going to talk about here. And we're kicking it right off with my start of the week because my start of the week at the running back position is James Cook, running back of the Buffalo Bills. Great usage in Week 1. He had 18 touches, 6 of them being targets, which is probably the sweet spot for James Cook. We don't want him getting 15, 20 carries up the middle. We want him getting, 10 to 15 carries and then 5 or 6 targets a game. This week, he will not be facing the New York Jets defense, which what I consider to be probably one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best defense in the league. The Raiders' run defense is pretty bad. It was 26th in DVOA in Week 1. They're a bottom 5 unit against the run last year. as well as against the pass. I think this is the get-right spot for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills offense, especially after a brutal loss to the New York Jets, a game that they definitely should have won with Zach Wilson as the quarterback. To me, I think the Bills minus 8.5 is also free money. But with James Cook, I mean, the usage was outstanding last week. 61% of the snaps with Damian Harris and Latavius Murray playing and eating into a bit of his, 2-minute drill workload is fine. I will say, if he's going to get a 60% snap share in this Buffalo Bills offense, he has the ability to finish as, a top 15 running back, and I'm ranking him quite aggressively this week. As a result, running back 14, I have A.J. Dillon here. So as I already talked about, Aaron Jones is probably going to be out this week against the Atlanta Falcons. He didn't practice Wednesday, he didn't practice Thursday, he didn't practice Friday. Dillon steps into a solid workload in relief of Aaron Jones as well. In the 2 career games that A.J. Dillon has played without Aaron Jones on the field, he received 16 and 17 touches, including one of those games where he had 6 targets. So with the Falcons defense, we know that they're going to try and run the ball on the other side against the Packers defense. This Falcons defense was a top 5 unit against the run in week 1, but they were a bottom 5 unit against the run last year. So I'm willing to bet they're probably closer to a soft run defense than a tough run defense. But A.J. Dillon, nonetheless, just off of pure volume, I think you can guarantee this guy for 15 to 20 touches if Aaron Jones is going to be out for this game, and he's probably going to run a majority of the running back routes as well, and he has a good chance of punching in a touchdown on the goal line if we get a sneaky high-scoring game in this one. So I like A.J. Dillon this week as a top 15 running back. Dameon Pierce, I also have here at RB15. After a preseason of workhorse usage, I was really excited to see kind of what we would get out of Dameon Pierce in week 1. But unfortunately, it was not what we saw in the preseason. We saw Mike Boone have a week 1 appearance. We saw Devin Singletary still involved as well. And Dameon Pierce was relegated to like a first and second down grinder. And I'm still holding out hope because it is just week 1. You can probably get a small discount on Dameon Pierce if people are worried about the usage, and he could get more work going forward. But I will say Dameon Pierce only getting 49% of the snaps for an offense that I expect to be bottom 5, bottom 10 in the NFL. As much as he's a great player, on a bad team, it's just really difficult to get anything done more than like mid RB2, purgatory, low end RB2 kind of status if you don't have a 3-down workload. And we thought there was a chance that Dameon Pierce might have a 3-down workload this year, even in good matchups like this week in a winnable game at home versus the Colts. I can still really only rank Dameon Pierce as a top 15 running back barely. I can't get him up to top 12 status, which I probably could have in this matchup if he had a 3-down workload in week 1. RB16 in my rankings has already played this week. It was Alexander Mattison. Played on Thursday Night Football, had a rough game, fumbled, couldn't get really anything going. Mattison just flat out isn't that good. But I will say, if the Mattison manager in your league is feeling hopeless right now and feeling like he's not going to do anything, I doubt he's going to be playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Philadelphia Eagles run defenses every single week. So I will say he's had a really tough matchup of defenses so far the first 2 games, and he has an easy stretch of the Los Angeles Chargers, Carolina Panthers, Kansas City Chiefs, and Chicago Bears coming up. So even though I wasn't in on drafting Alexander Mattison, I do think his workload is solid, and I do think you can probably get him for a decent discount right now. If some random RB3 off your bench or a random wide receiver 4 has a good game this week, you might be able to swap them 1 for 1 for Alexander Mattison. So RB17 right now in my rankings is my own Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Rachaad White. He has an excellent workload, 79% of the snaps in week 1, 56% of the carries, 55% route participation, got pretty much all of the long down and distance and 2-minute drill snaps as well. And we'd probably assume if they had any inside the 5 work or goal line carries, he probably would get that as well. But he's just not that good of a running back. Back-to-back guys here that are just good workload plays. Minus 37 yards over expectation rushing last week was Rachaad White against the defense that absolutely stinks in the Minnesota Vikings. Hell, we just saw what DeAndre Swift did to this defense. Rachaad White couldn't get anything going. The Bucs offensive line is built to pass protect. It is not built to run block. As long as he has this workload, though, you have to start him. He has to be in your lineup. And fortunately, the Bears defense is just as bad as the Minnesota Vikings. They let Aaron Jones run roughshod on them last week. So there's a chance that we get a good game out of Rachaad White here. If you do get a good game out of Rachaad White, I would suggest selling high on his workload, selling high on a good performance, because I just don't think this guy's going to hold this workload the entire season. He's just simply not a good enough running back to be a workhorse in the NFL, and I think Sean Tucker will edge into his groundwork as the season goes along. Running back 18 for me is Josh Kelly. So if you're wondering where Josh Kelly was going to fall, this is about the range that I would start to consider to put him into my lineup. I want to get him in my lineup if I can, because Austin Eckler has been the poster child for health the last couple years. So we really don't have any sample of what an Austin Eckler handcuff looks like, even against a fierce Tennessee Titans front. So it's not a good matchup for Josh Kelly. This workload's going to be too good to not put this guy into your lineup. And the Chargers were absolutely dominant up front last week, leading the NFL in adjusted run blocking yards, and anywhere in the red zone, we know that they're very likely to run the ball and run it at a high level. So if Josh Kelly has a chance to get 15 to 20 carries, a couple targets, and a couple goal line looks, like we're talking about a guy that has legitimate top 5, top 10 overall potential this week. So for me, I'm going to be starting him over potentially some safer options. I think he's an easy bet for a touchdown in this game. This game has a 45.5 point over-under. The Chargers are implied for 25 points. I think that you could get a pretty good week out of Josh Kelly with Austin Eckler most likely out for this game. So for me personally in my home league, I'm sitting Breece Hall in favor of Josh Kelly and A.J. Dillon. So if you guys have similar situations, that is how I am handling it. I trust the workloads of those guys and the better matchups in Breece Hall's case, who I'll talk about here in a second. But next, let's get into the low-end RB2s. So this is the next tier of running backs. Again, the format of this video basically indicates that anybody in this tier, I would sit in favor of anybody in the tier ahead of them, as I already talked about. So RB19 for me, leading off this tier, is Raheem Mostert. Despite a great workload percentage-wise, Raheem Mostert didn't really get a whole lot of touches last week. The track meet that we saw against the Chargers, it was just the Dolphins throwing the ball for the most part, and they basically threw the ball anytime that they had it. So I will say with Raheem Mostert, it doesn't look like this Dolphins offense is going to put as much of an emphasis on the run as they did last year, but he's still a great play this week. We will see probably Devon Achane make his season debut. This game has the fastest combined pace on the entire slate, with these two offenses running very up-tempo last week in neutral situations. So I really do think we're getting a pretty good spot here for Raheem Mostert to bounce back and have a big game. Running back 20 for me in my rankings is Javonte Williams. For his first game back, I was really, really impressed with what I saw out of Javonte Williams' usage, because he saw about half the snaps, most of the carries, most of the short yardage work, and that's honestly more than I expected. I thought Samaje Perine would get more work than that, at least in the first game of Javonte Williams coming back from the ACL tear, but 19 touches, including 6 targets. We now have a 4-game sample size with Javonte Williams getting a full workload. Back before he tore his ACL last year, we got 3 games out of Javonte Williams. He had 21 targets in those 3 games. Now we have a 4th game where he got another 6 targets. So we're talking 27 targets in 4 games that Javonte Williams has been the starter, and we haven't even really seen him get like a 60-70% snap share yet. We're talking about a guy that's pretty much still like a 50-50 timeshare guy, getting nearly 6 targets a game. So with Javonte Williams, I'm really excited to see what he can do for the rest of the season. If you guys need a running back right now and you have a lot of wide receivers performing at a high level on your bench, try swapping away a Michael Pittman or a Mike Evans or Zay Flowers or somebody like that for Javonte Williams, because I think we're talking about a guy that has legitimate RB1 upside as the season goes along, as soon as he gets back to his full workload, as soon as he gets back to his full efficiency, because he is obviously still coming off of an ACL tear. But I am really excited to see what Javonte Williams can do for the rest of the year. And speaking of ACL tear, guys, I have Breece Hall right here as well. Running back 21 right now in my rankings. It's an awful matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys with Zach Wilson at quarterback, and they're like 10-point underdogs versus a top 3 run defense. But Breece Hall should get slightly more work than he did last week, even though Robert Saleh came out and said, you know, we're still not rushing him back. He's still going to be on a pitch count. He's just so damn good. I don't want to leave this guy on my bench knowing of how good of a player he is. If you guys have A.J. Dillon, if you have Josh Kelly or somebody like that, Raheem Mostert, then yeah, you can probably sit Breece Hall. But if you're deciding between like Breece Hall and Isaiah Pacheco or something like that, just play Breece Hall. I realize it's a bad matchup and he didn't get really more than like 37% of the carries last week, but he gets targets. He can create explosive runs. I think the Jets will lean on the run in this game. And there's a good chance that Breece Hall can still get it done despite the tough matchup and Zach Wilson starting at quarterback. So Breece Hall, a little risky, but he is my RB21 in my rankings right now. Running back 22 for me in my rankings is Najee Harris. And here is exactly why I wasn't drafting Najee Harris. You guys can see what happened with his workload in week 1. This guy needed 400 touches to be an RB1 his rookie season. He had basically all of the opportunities that year as like a 90 to 95% opportunity share running back to be a top 5 running back like we saw from Najee Harris as a rookie. That simply just wasn't going to happen this year. Jaylen Warren is too good. He's a lot better than Najee Harris on a per-touch basis. Welcome to the new Najee Harris. This is what you need to expect out of Najee going forward. If you don't get a touchdown, you're going to want to pull your hair out because this guy is going to be a 50 to 60% snap share guy. He's going to cede work to Jaylen Warren. He's probably going to get out-targeted by Jaylen Warren, as we saw in week 1 as well. For me, he's in low-end RB2 purgatory rest of the season. Think of him the way that you think of David Montgomery. You can't think of Najee Harris anymore the way that we used to think about him, where he was this elite workload guy. If people still view him that way in your league, you need to sell Najee Harris before they realize that that's no longer who he is. If you guys can sell him right now for T. Higgins, or if you can sell him right now for Jalen Waddle, or hell, even if you can only get Javonte Williams plus for Najee Harris, I would absolutely go ahead and do that right now. If you drafted Najee Harris, just take the L and get off of him before things start hitting the fan, because I think that's probably what's going to happen, especially now with the Steelers offense being without Deontay Johnson. I think it's definitely going to hurt them going forward. So running back 23 in my rankings is the aforementioned David Montgomery. For me, I think he's one of the premier sell highs at running back in fantasy right now. Jahmyr Gibbs was in his first NFL game. This workload that David Montgomery got, which was elite, by the way, 77% of the snaps, 64% of the carries, pretty much all of the short yardage work, and in the red zone. I will say it's not going to last. And some of your guys' casual league mates might just look at the box score and look at the touches and look at the snap share and realize that David Montgomery might have like RB1 upside. But trust me, he's more of a low-end RB2 the rest of the season than what people are probably thinking. But that being said, he is still a good option this week. And if you're feeling a little bit more risk averse and you want to leave Breece Hall on your bench because you're scared of Zach Wilson and you're scared of the Cowboys matchup, I wouldn't blame you for starting David Montgomery over Breece Hall. It's a high over-under. It's a soft run defense. Definitely makes some sense. So closing out this tier of running backs is a guy that, of course, already played on Thursday Night Football as well. DeAndre Swift, dominant performance in week 2. I had him at RB24 in my rankings conservatively because DeAndre Swift is DeAndre Swift, right? I think him going off it doesn't shock any of us. We know he's a talented running back, but I also don't think we would have been totally shocked if it was like a 3-way timeshare between him and Boston Scott and Rashad Penny, and that is like actually what played out on Thursday night. That's why I ranked him at RB24. Hopefully you guys started him. If you didn't, I understand why you didn't, but if you got him, as I do in our listener league right now, and as me, Danny, and Ron have on our main event team, he should be on the way up right now. I think Kenneth Gainwell, week 1 workhorse season, is probably not going to be what happens going forward. I think at the very least, DeAndre Swift and Kenneth Gainwell will split touches, but definitely worth exploring what kind of trade offers you can get for DeAndre Swift once this week is over, because DeAndre Swift is still this volatile running back that seems to get like these stretches that get us all excited and then disappoints us. So if you can, after this week is over, see what you can get for DeAndre Swift. If you can get Breece Hall or Javonte Williams or somebody like that, absolutely go out and explore trade offers for that. Next, we get into the next territory of running backs, which is the flex plays. So these guys I'm going to briefly go through really fast. Miles Sanders, Jamal Williams, and James Conner. These guys are all workload plays. As you guys can see, James Conner, 83% of the snaps. Miles Sanders, 58% of the snaps, but a lot of the carries. And then Jamal Williams had 77% of the snaps in week 1. If you're looking for a workload, if you're looking for guaranteed touches, those are your guys for sure. But if you're looking a little bit more risky, a little bit more volatile, Isaiah Pacheco, Brian Robinson, and Khalil Herbert are also good plays in this area as well. With Khalil Herbert, we saw him get majority of the usage while the game was close in Chicago and Green Bay last week. But we did see once the game got out of hand, they used Roschon Johnson a little bit more. So that's a little bit of a threat that Roschon could be eating into his workload. But Isaiah Pacheco, I would say, is one of my favorite buy lows right now, because I think a lot of people don't view him as anybody, anything special. And I don't think he's a special running back by any means. But if he's going to be like a 50 to 60% snap share running back for the Kansas City Chiefs all year, he's going to be a guy that punches in 8 to 10 touchdowns and could be a solid RB2 for your team. And right now, he might be available for less than that. So if you guys could sell David Montgomery for Isaiah Pacheco plus or something like that, that is a trade that I would be looking to explore. And then with Brian Robinson, I'm almost willing to throw out this usage. I think it's good that he got 58% of the snaps and 72% of the carries and, ran a lot of routes as well. But Antonio Gibson fumbled, and we've seen when Antonio Gibson fumbles that usually he gets benched or usually he doesn't play as many snaps. So I will say I think this snap share and this workload will be a little bit closer to 50-50 week over week, and that's what makes Brian Robinson a little bit more volatile. But as far as if you guys don't have any of the running backs I talked about and you're in need of a deep league flex, I think these 5 players can also be solid assets to your team. Tyler Algier saw a decent workload last week. The run funnel defense that he plays against Green Bay, they are very hard to pass against, but they are not very hard to run against. And of course, we know the Atlanta Falcons love to run the football, so Tyler Algier, a decent flex play as well. Gus Edwards is also, I talked about him during the waiver segment, that he was my favorite of the two Ravens running backs. J.K. Dobbins is now out for the year. Gus Edwards has been the more efficient runner versus Justice Hill, and also Justice Hill is just too small to carry a big workload on the ground. I would like to wait and see if possible on Gus Edwards. If you don't have to start him this week, like I talked about all the guys ahead of him, I would start over Gus Edwards because I would like to wait and see what this split looks like between Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. If I don't have to start him, I wouldn't like to, but he definitely was one of the biggest waiver pickups for me of the week. Antonio Gibson, definitely still a viable flex option as well. He lost snaps after fumbling last week, but don't let that discourage you too much. He'll probably get a bigger workload this week. And then finally, to close out my top 35, 36 running backs overall, I have Kyren Williams and Cam Akers back-to-back because I'm a complete coward and I don't really know who to rank higher. Between the two Rams running backs, I think you probably don't want to start these guys against the San Francisco 49ers. The splits favor Kyren Williams, and they're definitely encouraging for him, but I don't expect a lot of efficiency out of this backfield. So if I don't have to start one of these running backs, I definitely would not want to, but I understand if you guys are desperate, you needed to pick up Kyren Williams to fill in for J.K. Dobbins or to fill in for Aaron Jones or whoever. I understand why you have to play him. I think his workload is decent, but I really don't want to have to play him if I don't have to. So that is the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like down below. Let's try and get to this video to 300 likes. So I think we can get that done. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here. Leave any of your comments down below. And of course, if I answer your comment, definitely leave a like and subscribe on the video as well. If you guys want access to this data that I broke down, if you want access to our weekly rankings to help you with your start-sit decisions, then definitely go on over to flockfantasy.com and use the promo code FSE when you sign up for 30% off. You'll get 6 months for free if you sign up annually, a 2-day free trial to try out the site to see all of the value before you buy anything. And of course, if you want our weekly rankings as well, you can get them for free when you sign up on Underdog Fantasy using just a minimum $10 deposit, which you can then win money with. You'll get 100% back up to $100, and you can get our weekly rankings and our rest of season rankings for free. So if that interests you, both will be linked down below in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.